We are 2 minutes to game time.
How's everything in Tampa?
It was good. Nice day today. I mean, the Lightning lost to you guys last night.
Got wrecked. Yeah.
We were at the game, and it was just brutal to watch.
Yeah. Final score is what, like 5-1?
Yeah, I mean, we left at the end of the second period and went home. But I
Yeah.
only live about a 10-minute walk from the arena, and our office is, well, as you know,
Your office is right there. Yeah.
right downtown.
Okay. Yeah. So you have like a condo right over there too?
We do, yeah. My wife and I live over at Platten Bayshore, which is right over the small bridge from the convention center. We're right there. So we're out of downtown, but we are close.
That's
What I'm
awesome.
going to do, since this is recording, and I doubt people have joined. I don't even know if people. How can we tell if they're there? They're supposed to
That is
be.
good.
There's supposed to be a chat. Maybe it'll pop up. Well, let's see how it goes. I'll start off with the disclaimer, and then we'll jump into it. If anybody's watching or for when this is recorded, the content of this interview will be for informational purposes only and shall not constitute legal, financial, investment, or professional advice. The information provided in this interview is unverified and should not be used as a substitute for competent legal and other professional advice. Investors must conduct their own due diligence before making any investment decisions. The views and opinions expressed in this interview are solely those of the individual participants. That is Brian Brady and Daniel Osman, and do not reflect an official policy or position of Matthews Real Estate Investment Services, aka the firm. The interview is not sponsored by, approved by, or attributable to the firm, and the firm makes no representation or warranty of any kind of its completeness, accuracy, reliability, suitability, or availability of the contents of this interview. And with that,
Legal's always fun.
legal's
I echo
always
every.
fun, right?
I echo everything you said.
Yeah, for anybody watching, whether you're a broker or an investor, what I'll say to you, I'll sum up the legal stuff. Look, I had the opportunity to meet Daniel face to face. I know a little bit about his company. Whatever you see today, don't take it face value. Do your own due diligence. Do some research and call him and ask around for references. Seems fair?
Super fair. Everyone should do their own thinking.
Yeah. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about you kind of before we get started, as we're starting here, where you're from, your career path. You went to University of Florida, correct?
Yeah, went to the University of Florida, so I'm a rare local, born and raised, and living in South Florida. Family originated from New York, so we did transplant. But yeah, born and raised in South Florida. Got my master's in accounting at the University of Florida, and got my CPA. I worked at Deloitte for 5 years. Funnily enough, my client year round was Lennar Home Builders and Rialto Capital, so that's where I kind of got my real estate chops. After 5 years doing the consulting, went to Home Depot corporate, which was really interesting as a consultant there to help build out their service provider network. Moved over to a online brand management team, which was really cool to help grow online sales. And then I got introduced to these two guys who were starting a company, and my brother-in-law knew I would like a startup more than I did. So took the plunge, and we did a startup company. It went really well. We got acquired. And then we really liked working together, and now we're on to this one. And before I met them, they had started another company that got acquired by Open Door. So this is as a founding.
What was the other company that got acquired by Open Door?
It was called Open Listings. It was mainly focused in California, but their whole thing was you get 50% of the commission back from the brokerage side. So maybe a lot of the people on here might not like that, but
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of those intermediaries that came out and did that, and they had moderate success, and they carved out a portion of the market which needed to be carved out.
Yeah,
I don't know that it's look, any broker out there knows all clients are different, and sometimes you don't want to work with clients like that, and that's fine too. Which, by the way, well, once we get back to you, I forgot to mention, I'm Brian Brady. I am a vice president of capital markets in our Tampa office, which means I'm a commercial real estate loan broker. I've been in real estate finance for close to 30 years. And Daniel is my guest. I'm going to start doing these every other Wednesday with interesting people in the industry. And Daniel's certainly an interesting person. And when we heard him do our presentation, we got excited. So that's how you got to deferred, right? You worked with this team before. With your brother-in-law still involved in the firm?
No. So he's going through growth through acquisition. He's actually doing something interesting on the pest. He kind of left corporate world and is buying up pest control companies.
Gotcha.
So a private equity play. But yeah, met the founders. We built a company together. I was the first hire there, and then sold that, got acquired, and we started this. Our CEO Judd, who's one of the co-founders, he was looking into doing a 1031 personally, and was kind of shocked at how offline the whole process was. Would go on a few websites trying to find a QI because you got the same question everyone else does: is these people have to hold my money? That's kind of crazy. And so when he started asking QIs about the 1031 process, he was kind of shocked to see A, the websites were pretty archaic, B, everything was offline, and C, there was no way to really verify where the funds were held. And then we did more digging. He kind of told us about it, so we all did a little bit more digging, and then we learned. He asked about the interest. Rates were high, and so they're still high. And he asked, what happens to the interest? And he was pretty shocked to learn that the QI just mostly keeps it all, unless you're an institutional investor and know to ask and negotiate. So then we learned, okay, there's an industry that's pretty niche. There's not a lot of software tech behind it. The customer service was okay. So it was hard to get people on the phone sometimes or get a response. And then the other part is they're making all this margin on interest earned and they're charging a fee. And so we thought it was a really interesting business, and ended up acquiring a qualified intermediary out of San Diego called Plenti Financial, Plenti Financial. They've been operating for over 25, 30 years. So we joined them, rebranded as Deferred, and launched our software that we created and came out with a no-fee exchange model.
So I'm going to ask you what a 1031 exchange is, just to ask you to go through it. If you want to start sharing your screen, I know you've got some little graphics that we're going to do. While you're doing that, I'll just share. I mean, I've done an exchange personally. In my career, I'm a licensed real estate broker in 3 states: California, Alabama, and Florida. And I've had an MLS license, and I've had clients that did exchanges. And I've had some good qualified intermediaries. When I say good, they're not terrible. But it always feels like I'm babysitting the transaction, and that was just a little bit of a pain in the butt for me. So I'm excited to see your software, even though I've had a preview of it. So you're sharing the screen now, right?
Yeah. So I'm sharing my screen, so I can go through what is a 1031.
Yeah, why don't we do that?
And also, Brian, just on your point, like when we were starting this business, we interviewed a bunch of people around like their experience, and we heard the same thing. It just seemed like they were hard. They didn't really care about the transaction, and it was hard to kind of stay in the loop on things. Let's go into what is a 1031. It's shocking how many people actually don't know what a 1031 is, and I'll put my hand up. I'm a CPA, master's in accounting. I worked at, my main client was Lennar, Rialto Capital. All these are real estate investors and involved in real estate. I didn't know what a 1031 was, never heard the words uttered until a few years ago, way after my accounting career, after I left Deloitte. So a lot of CPAs just don't even know about it either. And then a lot of real estate investors don't know about it either. And it really is this generational wealth hack. I think it's one of the best kept secrets for people that don't know about it. And I mean, I don't know a lot of ways where you can have millions of dollars in gains and not pay a single cent in taxes and keep that money. So it is really powerful. But essentially, what is a 1031? You get to sell real estate property that's used as an investment and buy more real estate property that's used as an investment. A lot of people get confused with the like kind. They see these words like kind. I had a client who I cold called a long time ago. They're a real estate broker on the residential side. They were selling an office building looking at a $700,000 gain. I said, why don't you do a 1031? They said, I don't want to buy another office building. And I said, you don't need to do that. That's not what like kind means. You can really go into anything as long as it's real estate. You can even go into oil and mineral rights. You get to sell real estate investment property, buy real estate investment property, and not pay any taxes. And so the reason the IRS lets you do this is this term or this thought of continuity of investment, right? You keep your money going, you keep it flowing in the economy. And because you're not pulling any money out, they won't tax you.
So this is interesting. There's a little saying in our industry. We say, exchange till you drop, right? Just keep
Right.
going. And there's a reason for that. So like I have one daughter, and if I left my properties to her, and I will, when I drop, and of course my wife too, when we pass, she actually gets that property at a stepped up basis, right?
Right. So a lot of people don't know that about 1031s. It's a great estate planning tool.
Yeah.
And the strategy is called, that I hear, swap till you drop. That's how we refer to it, right? So swap till you drop. It's what I tell people is, it's not great for you. It's great in the sense that you never paid taxes and you get to keep rolling that money over. But it's really great for your heirs. So when you drop, like you said, they get to pick it up at a step up in basis. You could have been doing 1031s for 40 years, never paid a dime in taxes. When you drop, they get it step up in basis. They can sell it the very next day, not pay a dime. One of the biggest mistakes I actually see sometimes is, and I had a client a few weeks ago that this happened. They're, some people are worried about probate and, after they pass away, so they put their children on title for like a small percentage, thinking they're helping them. But that actually wipes away some of the step up for the percentage they have. So yeah, it's a great estate planning tool. And a lot of people don't realize you can keep going and never pay the tax.
That's the plan. I like it a lot of times to people who don't know about it. I talk about it like an IRA rollover, right? Because you can't touch the money, and also you have to step up. So if you sell a $2 million property, you've got to spend at least $2 million, and you also have to replace the debt, right? You have to borrow as much or more. Is that correct?
Right, and I like to simplify it because it's really not the debt piece. And also I've changed the slide so there are what most people, common misconceptions. The way I explain it, and if there's a mathematician out there, this has never been proved wrong to me. So happy to take people a challenge. But if you do these two things, you'll fully defer taxes. And the reason I simplify it like this is the debt piece can get a lot of people tripped up. But if you reinvest all of the proceeds that you acquired from the sale, so everything in your exchange account, if you spend all that, and if you buy property for more than what you sold for, you'll always defer taxes.
Yeah.
So those are the two.
You'll have to borrow more
right?
money anyway, right? Yeah.
Right. So with the debt, what you can't do is you can't take more debt and keep equity, because then that's
Right.
mortgage boot and cash boot. And so, yeah, if you do those two things, you're going to fully defer. And you did bring up a really good common misconception of, is it, do I only have to reinvest the gain? I get that all the time and I had a client who called me a few weeks ago, selling for $2.2 million, $700,000 gain, and said, yeah, I'm looking to buy the $700,000 property. And I said, I hate to burst your bubble, but you actually have to reinvest around $2.2 million. It's the net sales price, not just the gain. And he didn't even end up doing an exchange because he wasn't prepared to spend that much money. And then you also mentioned something else, a strategy I love to tell people about. I had a call today with a client. You mentioned you got to keep the money out. You can't touch it. And that's true. You can't, any chips you pull off the table, you got to pay for. But debt's not taxable. And so I have a client who wants to take $75,000 out of their sale. And I said, look, what you can do instead, do the full 1031 exchange, reinvest the full proceeds, don't take the money out, refinance after the fact, pull the 75 grand out that way. You're not taxed on that. And it's typically going to be cheaper to pay the 6.5%, 7% debt service fee than the 20 to 40%, depending on where you're living, taxes.
Yeah. If you live in California, they tax it as regular income. If you live in Florida, of course, we have a little bit of a break. That's why I'm in Florida. So if I sell my $2 million property and I'm going to buy a $3 million property, I can't take the money. So where's the money go? That's where you come in. Talk about what a QI is.
Right. So let's talk about what a 1031 exchange process is and how the QI fits in, right? A lot of people kind of get over their skis and they make a 1031 to be way more than it has to be, which it can certainly get complex. There's certainly gray areas. I always try to just really simplify it. When you're doing a 1031, you're selling an investment property, you're buying another investment property. The only difference is there's three things. One, you have to have a QI set up before you close. It's per IRS guidelines. You have to work with a qualified intermediary. That's what a QI stands for. Also, people refer to as exchange accommodator. Next, if you're instead of you getting the money when you close, right? And this is a scary part for people. Instead of the money being wired to you, title wires the money to the qualified intermediary. Every qualified intermediary does things differently. The good ones set up segregated bank accounts at FDIC commercial partners. The money's never commingled, right? So you want to look for that in a qualified intermediary. And then the last part is there's two timelines. So you're on a 45-day and 180-day timeline. You have 45 days to identify the property and 180 days to complete the purchase. That 45-day timeline gives a lot of people heartburn. I would say that's the most common thing people are afraid of. And what I tell them is if you're proactive, you have a lot more than 45 days. Typically when you go under contract, it takes at least 30 on a fast close to close. Right. If you start thinking about what you want to buy and start narrowing it down at when you get under contract, if it's just 30 days, you have 75 days to start figuring out what you want to identify, not purchase, identify what you're interested in. And so 92% of our clients are successful, meaning they did the exchange and that 45 days wasn't a hurdle.
And you're allowed to identify 3 properties, correct?
So there's 3 different identification rules. I won't go into a third because I've never seen it done. I don't know when it actually ever makes sense. It's called the 95% one. But the other 2 are the 3 property rule. That's the most common one. You see that all the time. You list any 3 properties, whatever those 3 properties are, that's what you're able to purchase with your tax deferred dollars. I get this question all the time. What if those properties aren't available anymore? If it's after day 45 and you submitted that list, you're out of luck, unfortunately. The IRS doesn't want to make it so easy for you to not pay the taxes, right? The second rule is the 200% rule. And this is what I use with clients who they want to do what I call like a diversification exchange. They're selling one property and they want to go into multiple. That's when a 200% rule makes a lot of sense. So maybe you're selling something for $1 million and you want to buy 4 $250,000 properties. The 200% rule, what you can do is you can identify any amount of properties. So you're not limited to a number. What you are limited by is 200% of the fair market value of what you sold. The sum of those properties listed can't exceed that. Okay. So in that $1 million example, they can list any number of properties, but the sum of their fair market values can't exceed $2 million.
So if I'm selling a $2 million 10-unit apartment house in St. Petersburg, Florida, and I'm looking just for low drag, low management. I'm going to go buy some Dollar Generals, credit tenant type, triple net lease properties. I can actually identify $4 million Dollar Generals. Is that correct? If I'm selling a $2 million property?
Yeah, you can identify 4 $1 million Dollar Generals. So right. You can, and then, if you want, you can buy 2 of those and reach that reinvestment amount. Or you have the option on any of those 4 properties. So that's the benefit of the 200% rule is if you're looking to spend less than what you purchased or than what you sold for, it's typically a really good option.
So why would you do that? So if I'm selling for $2 million and I only close on day 180 for $1.8 million, why would I do that? Now I'm going to get taxed. Am I going to get taxed on the whole amount, or tell me about that?
Yeah, so you're only taxed on the shortfall. So the government's actually nice here. It's not like you either completed the whole thing and you get all of it or nothing. So if you sold for call it 2.1 and your net sales price was 2 and you only reinvested 1.8, that shortfall of 200,000, that's what's going to be taxable. So you'll hit taxes there. But yeah, the 200% rule, again, it really is for those people who want to diversify into multiple smaller properties. For the person that wants to do what I call a consolidation exchange and sell 1 or 2, and this is what most people do, right, is they want to go up. They want to go equal and better. They don't want to go into a lower level property. So most people do the 3 property rule because I have a guy right now selling for $5 million, wants to buy a $12 million property. For him, the 200% rule makes absolutely no sense because he can't even list one $12 million property and get away with it. So he can list 3 different 12 million properties though, and buy one of those.
Okay, that makes sense. So again, we know the money's got to go to a QI, a qualified intermediary. And like I say, for anybody who's had an IRA and they've left their company and had to roll over, if they touch the money, they get hit with taxes. And that's why your 401k provider sends it to your IRA provider and you don't see it. It's the same with you. The QI, the qualified intermediary, is the custodian of those assets, right? So when my apartment house sells, the wire from the title company is going to go to you. And when I close on my $2 generals, you're going to disperse those funds, and I'm never going to touch that money. And it's a clean exchange. Is that
right?
accurate?
And totally accurate. And it also it's the whole reason we have to do this is the IRS. The reason you use a qualified intermediary in the first place is the IRS created this constructive receipt rule, right? And so you can't have constructive receipt of the funds. And so you can never touch the funds. You have constructive receipt. And it's also the reason you have to use a QI. So, if you're selling a large property and there's a lot of money involved, your first thought is going to be, hey, I want to use my CPA. I want to use my attorney. I want to use my broker. You can't use them, right? You have to use they're considered a disqualified agent. You have to use a qualified agent, which is someone who hasn't done or provided services to you within the last 2 years, right? Okay. So a qualified intermediary fits that bill. And funnily enough, people are like, well, if you did my exchange 2 years ago, can you be the QI again? Yeah, there's like a exclusion that services for the exchange are not part of that. But yeah, a lot of people are like, I'm just going to use my attorney. You can't, they're disqualified. So you really want to get someone independent. And that's the whole reason the qualified intermediary exists. The worst call I can get is, and I get this all the time, hey, I just closed yesterday on my sale. I'd love to set up a 1031. It's too late. When I tell them it's too late, they've already closed. They're like, why? I didn't touch the money. Constructive receipt also is in form. And so your settlement statement has to be set up in a correct way. There's notification of assignments that need to be produced. And so even though escrow is still, they'll tell me escrow is holding the money. Like I haven't touched it. It's not in my account, or I have a check in my hand, but I didn't cash it. Doesn't matter. It wasn't set up properly before you closed on the sale. And those are the most painful calls, but it's a painful lesson. People don't forget that.
So when you're listing a property, or you're getting ready to list an investment property and your plan is to buy another one, that's the time to go onto your website and then talk to you and do your due diligence. Again, we know what a qualified intermediary is. I've done these. I've dealt with 3 or 4 different intermediaries. There's some that aren't very good, and there's some that are not bad. But I had to get involved as both the broker and as the investor and just be paying attention to this stuff. What makes your company different from other intermediaries?
Yeah, great question. And I'm always excited to talk about this. So let me pull up our website.
Okay.
So I can share what makes us different.
You going to reshare it?
Let's go. So let me know if you can see that.
Yep, I can see it.
All right, awesome. So,
okay, hey, let's take a step back. So obviously you don't do it for free. Most intermediaries charge $1,000 or $2,000 for their services to hold your money and disperse it and do it all correctly. That's what most intermediaries do. That's where you're a bit different, right? And by the way,
right,
most places that I know of, they hold your money for 2, 3, 4, 5 months, and they don't pay you interest on it. If you have $4 or $5 million in there, that can add up. This is really kind of what makes you different, right?
Yeah. So there's a few things that make us different and that enable us to do all this. And I'll get into that. But, from a customer facing, what makes us different is, to your point, Brian, a typical QI is going to charge you $1,200 to $2,000. They charge wire fees, rush fees. They charge additional property fees. We do it for free. If you're doing a forward standard exchange, it's free. There's no fees whatsoever. We're the only ones that do that. And then like you mentioned, most people don't really know this or think about it. And I talk to brokers all day, and I always get this light bulb when I tell them this. But I'm like, the QI, they're not making their money. They're not paying their rent with a $1,200 fee. It's the interest they earn, especially over the last few years where rates have been really high. They earn a lot of money on the float. So when one of our main jobs is to safeguard proceeds, that money just sits, at least for us, in a high yield savings account in a commercial bank segregated account. But on a $5 million exchange, if I hold it for 90 days, that's 50 grand in interest earned. And so with large exchanges, especially you work in the commercial space, I mean, it's pretty common. It adds up really quick. And so with a typical QI, most of them keep the interest unless you're sophisticated and to negotiate. They don't really talk about it, and they distract you with hey, I'm going to charge you $1,200 for this. But what actually happened is they made $51,200. And so going back to what makes us different, we don't charge the fee. Our goal there is we think everyone should do 1031 exchanges. There's a stat out there that only 9% of transactions that qualify do an exchange. I know one of the larger brokerage, 15% of their transactions were exchanges. And to us, it's kind of crazy. There's such a benefit, and most people who sell do buy something. So we want to make it risk-free. Literally, you can cancel your exchange, even if you don't find a property, still costs nothing. The second thing we do outside of not charging a fee is we actually pay a share of that interest back to the client, which is really cool. So now you go from this conversation of, hey, this is something that's going to cost you, to you're going to get paid to not pay taxes, which is pretty cool. And so if you go on our website, you can go into our pricing tab. It's right there. You can model out.
Let's run that, because I've got a client. They own I guess it's 6 units out in San Diego, and they've been operating as an Airbnb, and they're going to make the jump into buying a motel.
Cool.
I think they're going to sell for about $2 million. A little bit more. They're going to sell for about $2.5 million, and they've got maybe $900,000 worth of debt on it. And then, and they're wanting to spend about $4 to $4.5 million. So if they sell for 2.5 and they've got $900,000 worth of debt, then they're going to have $1.6 million. Is that right?
Yeah. So let's put it to $1.5 million after accounting for commissions and closing costs and all that. Yeah. And so, they could come here and model out. If they were to do it for 150 days, they're going to earn $6,000, $6,165. Yep. And again, historically, they're going to be paying for the service. So now they actually get paid to do it. Where this gets really interesting is over 5 million. It jumps up. So on our website, you'll see it, but we pay 1% APY on funds from 1 million to 5 million. Over 5 million for those larger exchanges, these clients actually earn 2.5%. And so it's a really big bump. They actually earn a lot of money. Our calculator won't even go there, but
so I know another client who's thinking, who owns a hotel. They're going to probably sell it for about 10 million, and they'd like to buy something in the $15 million range. I think they owe about, they only owe about 3 million on the property. So they're going to have $7 million sitting there.
Yeah. So
wow.
On $7 million,
call it 90 days. Let's see what it is 90 days for $7 million.
Yeah. So, if we held it for 90 days, which our average is around 3.5 months, they're going to get paid, 43 grand to not pay taxes. I had a really cool story.
That covers an employee's salary.
Exactly. I was just going to kind of go there. I had a guy who was selling a convenience store, and he was going to work with a company that was charging him $1,100 to do the exchange. He was selling for $6 million. He had no debt. He found out about us right before he closed and switched. That guy went from paying $1,100 to actually earning over 10 grand a month in interest.
Wow.
And it was cool because the way he equated it to me, which I had never thought of, is he said, so wait, if I take the full 180 days, can't find, or, takes 180 to make the purchase, I'll earn over 60 grand. And I was like, yeah, you'll pay you over 60 grand. And he was like, that's an annual salary for one of my general managers at the convenience store. And so, and again, so he gets this 60 grand to help fund his business. And then he also deferred his taxes and got to reinvest all those proceeds.
So, well, that's just huge. I mean, not only because people say, oh, wow, you're free. That saves me $1,000. It's not just that. It's if you've got a substantial amount of money sitting there for a period of time. I mean, just in this one example here, that's $45,000. Like I said, that's someone's employee. That's an employee. That's it's a decent car. Maybe it's a decent used car. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with that money, with that $43,000.
I would take 43 grand right now.
All day long.
Yeah. And yeah, it's been pretty cool. Honestly, the biggest pushback we get from clients, I was on the phone last night at 8:30 with a client. He's going back and forth, really wants to use us, but he's like, this seems too good to be true. Like, I just hear that all the time. And I joke, I'm like, I can charge you if you want me to. If it makes you, if I told the guy yesterday, I can charge you $300 if it makes you trust me more. And he laughed. He's like, it probably would. If you charge me 300, I'd feel better about it. But we are of the belief that we can offer a better service than people that charge and do it for free and make it more rewarding.
Well, I mean, we know you're not doing it for free. I mean, you're paying 2.5 API, and I know you're going to be able to get 3 to 3.5% in these banks, and that's fine. There's no problem with that. I mean, the difference is not only you're not charging a fee, you're earning less of a spread than every other intermediary. And so
right.
I think that positions you, especially for some of these commercial transactions where 7, 10, 20, 7, 10, $12 million is moving. Then it becomes real money. And even if it's just for 90 days, again, $7 million right there for 90 days is close to $45,000. That's a lot of money.
Well, and you're looking at it just on one transaction. I was talking to an investor last week. This guy typically uses another QI, one of the larger ones. He's been using them for the past 5 years. In the past 5 years, he's done 20 something exchanges, like 21, I think he said. And I told him, I was like, so you're telling me over the last 5 years, you've spent, close to 32 grand in fees? And he's like, yeah, that's about accurate. Each one ends up being around 1,500 because I'm dealing with multiple properties sometimes. And so I'm like, all right, so over the last 5 years, you spent over 35 grand. You've done over 20, this guy does a bunch of 1031s. And they're larger, they're agricultural land. So they're pretty big deals. I was like, if you had just used me, you would have spent 0 versus 35, and you would have gotten paid interest on these. So, if you look at it, I think a lot of people look at it at the one transaction, but what I've learned is if you do one 1031, you're most likely going to do more.
Yep.
And so I try to teach investors, have this long-term view of maybe you do 15, and that's 20 grand in fees that were saved. And also maybe 15 times 4, maybe this person does 15 $7 million exchanges, and 43 times 15, right? That person's getting over $600,000 in interest earned over their 1031 exchange lifetime. And that could have been 0.
Yeah, no, it's powerful. Some of the people watching are commercial real estate brokers. I'm sure there's some residential brokers on there too, because my wife is a residential mortgage broker, and I know she invited some real estate brokers, some residential real estate brokers as well. Can you show us what you do for brokers, that real estate broker exchange analysis? So if in the commercial world, if someone's investing a property, they'll put together an offering memorandum. In the residential world, they might put this as an attachment in the MLS, but this is really useful. So kind of show us what you got there.
Yeah, good call, Brian. When we started this, before we started it, we interviewed hundreds of brokers, RIAs, CPAs, because we're trying to figure out who's teaching people about 1031s, like how do they find out about it and how do they educate them? Most brokers and RIAs had, no offense, pretty bad Excel spreadsheets to just show this really large, important transaction. And it was hand keyed. It wasn't very sophisticated. So what we did is, and it wasn't a good educational tool. It wasn't really great. So anyways, we built this tool with the thought of, we want brokers to have something to educate clients, and we want to make it really easy and they can see the impact. And so this exchange analysis, we can make this for any broker, residential, commercial, anyone that wants it. You just have to email me, daniel@deferred.com.
Okay.
Send me the listing. I'll create this for you.
Great.
It's absolutely free. A lot of brokers put them in their offering memorandums, like you said, or trying to win the listing. They'll show it to their client to, there's a lot of a lot of brokers are going after the same listing. It's not just you. And so a lot of brokers will put this in front of the client to show them that they're an advisor and give them maybe something to think about that no one else has showed. But, and eventually this will also be self-serve. We're working on it where you can just log in and create one, so you won't have to email me in the future. But we'll create this. It'll have the address. It'll have your picture. It'll have your brokerage. But this is, and it'll be for the specific property. This is just an example of, here's someone who sold a property in Minnesota for 3.7 million. They had $1 million basis, so they had $2.7 million gain. Most people, it blows my mind. Most people don't talk to their CPA until after they sold the property, right? You're doing this really big transaction, and then you do it, and then you talk to your CPA. You should do it beforehand. But when they do it after, they find out.
I don't want to call the CPA. He charges me $200 an hour, $934,000, right?
Right. Their CPAs are worth their weight in gold if you have a good one.
Right.
They're worth their time. Most people, I have it all the time. They're like, I'm only going to pay capital gains tax. Not true. You know, Minnesota, you have a state tax, 9.8%. This is the big one that most people don't know about, depreciation recapture. I actually just posted this story on LinkedIn, but I talked to a client on Monday. They own the property for 9 years. They said, well, I've never taken, they were like, I only have to pay capital gains tax. And I said, well, depending on your income, you might also have this net investment income tax of 3.8. They were located in Florida, so there was no state. But I said, you've owned the property for 9 years. You also have depreciation recapture, and that's taxed at 25%. That's the big one that people don't know. And he's like, I've never taken depreciation, so I'm good. And I said, I'm sorry, but that's not how it works. The IRS assumes it's called allowable depreciation, so they tax you on it. Now, this guy can go and file a 3115 form and, you know, read and take the depreciation. It's going to cost him, and it's also going to be a headache. But just because you didn't take depreciation doesn't mean you're not going to get taxed on it. And what's been really popular in the last few years is bonus depreciation and cost segregation studies.
Yep.
If you did bonus depreciation, you're taxed on all the depreciation you took. You might have owned a property for 4 years and fully depreciated it in 4 years.
Yep.
That's tax that at 25%. That's a huge tax bill, no matter where you live.
There are a lot of car wash operators, that took advantage of that. And, you know, they're going to sell 4 years later, and they're not, and maybe they want to get out of the car wash business, but that's fine. But they're going to get whacked with that tax, and they need to be thinking about this. They need to see this analysis so they can say, okay, maybe I buy something a little less onerous.
Exactly. So brokers can use this as an educational tool to be like, look, you're not just paying federal capital gains tax. Like 35% of your gain is going to go to the government. You could pay $934,000, or you could pay nothing and keep $934,000 in your pocket working for you. And imagine having $934,000 more in the market, in the real estate, being able to buy something more. So that's the point of this part. The other point that we talked about earlier is the like kind. People get confused. This is just to show them, like, look, you can kind of go into any of these properties. It doesn't have to be office for office. You can go into single family rental, Airbnb. You can go into hotel, multifamily land. We try to show the advantages and disadvantages, give an estimated return profile. In the future, we're working on where brokers can actually put their own listings here that they want to sell to a client. Wow. So they'll be able to say, hey, here's because what we got feedback from brokers. The biggest objection I get is, well, if I sell, what do I reinvest in?
Right.
And so we want to make this, instead of generic, let you put the listings that you want to show them and show that return for each property. And maybe you go good, better, best, and kind of help sell them. The other question people get is, don't count the last 3 weeks, but the S&P 500 is ripping. I'm just going to pay the taxes and put it in the market. All right. Even if you do that, this shows what your return, what your proceeds look like after 10 years being in the S&P, earning 7.2% a year. You had a good return, but you started off $935,000 lighter. It's hard to make up that gap, no matter how good the market does. Right. And then the last thing goes to just like that estate planning. You know, some people say, I don't want to be a tenant or landlord anymore. There's passive options. Triple net leases are great. DSTs are good for the right person. Right. And then, we show the timeline and try to make it really easy to say, like, look, this is something that you can do. And also you can start online.
That's amazing. So, all right. So I'm selling my apartment complex. I've done all this. I'm sold on the process. I've listed the property. Is it time to start my exchange? And if so, what can I expect with deferred when I do that?
Yeah. I mean, we kind of do a different process than most QIs. We'll get you set up your property doesn't even have to be listed. If you like know you're going to sell, we'll get you set up and get you an exchange agreement. So it's one less thing that you have to think about. And then once you're under contract, yeah, introduce us to title and escrow, and we'll get your other documents. But we can get an exchange agreement out whenever you're ready. When someone who wants to use us, we have, I talked about all these things that we do, right? The no fee, the sharing interest. One of the reasons we can do that, there's two reasons mainly, is our software, which I'll show you what the client can expect. And two is, we don't have a sales or marketing team. There's no one at our company that makes commission. There's no marketing spend really. I've been to 2 conferences and I bought 2 shirts that say no fee exchange. But outside of that, we don't really spend money on marketing, and we don't have a sales team that makes commission. It's pretty much entirely word of mouth. But when a client signs up with us, again, through our research and just looking at other QIs, there's no software. It's really, a lot of QIs will use Excel or other spreadsheets to track the exchange. There's some white label software that works okay and it's internal, but there's no client facing software. So
there's not. That's one of the frustrating things is I am always in the exchanges where I was the broker or involved with in one way as a participant, one way or the other as an advisor or participant. I always got frustrated because I was always saying, gosh, can't you guys just, send out an email on day 42, right? I mean, if stuff's needed, can't you automate this stuff? And it sounds like you've got that boiled down. Are you going to show that to us now?
Yeah. So what you're looking at, we show anyone who does an exchange with us, all their exchanges will sit here. And what we're looking at dummy data, just so I don't share any personal information, but any exchange you've ever done is right here at your fingertips. It could be 5 years old. It could be 10 years old. It could be active. All your exchanges will be in one place. When you log in, this is what you see.
Okay.
So the main questions we get from clients is, what is my timeline? And again, to your point, like it's like an email reminder, which we do send, but there's nothing showing. You can't log on and see like, all right, where am I at in the process? Where do I get my documents? What do I have to do next? This answers all those questions. So for this person, you could see exactly what they have to do next. They have to sign their exchange agreement. Right now it's under review. When they get pushed, they can click and sign their agreement. They can see exactly who their primary exchange officer is. They can click to easily schedule a call with them. They can send a message. Yeah, they can chat with them right here. In the future, their bank account will be here. So that question of how is my funds safe? We want to make this like a bank account. You log in, you see your funds plus the interest you're earning. And then you can see all the information on each property you sold and bought, who was involved, the details, the identification letter. We talked about those timelines. They're calendar days. They're not business days. If your ID deadline ends on a Saturday and your QI is not open and you don't have what you need, you might be in trouble. I'll note that we are open 8 a.m.
That almost happened to us because I was frantically on the phone one time. It was in San Diego, and I was on the phone with the intermediary on Friday morning saying, well, tomorrow or Sunday's the 45th day. So what do we do then? Someone going to be there? No. We closed at 5 o'clock. And fortunately, we got the form filled out, but
it happens all the time. You're not the only one. And so, if you have questions on a Saturday, good luck. We're open 8 a.m. to midnight, 7 days a week, but our clients can come here and fill it out without us, and it'll tell them if it's compliant or not. So if they identify more than 3 properties, and we can check this one out, might be better. So I went through, this one shows, they started their exchange, what their different tasks are, when they're due. Let's see what this one looks like on the ID. No. So when they're at the point, it'll have their ID letter ready, and they can just go ahead and enter the information. If they put more than 3 properties, it'll tell them like, hey, you've broken the 3 property rule. You now have to use the 200%. And it'll tell them if the 200% rule is compliant or not. So they have all this as self-serve. And then if they ever need to edit it, they can submit on day 10 their ID letter. If they need to edit it, they can go back in here, edit their ID letter without us, and resubmit as much as they want up until day 45. And then you talk about the, you've done these personally, Brian, but you're in email threads usually for like 4 to 6 months, and you're in 15 to 20 different email threads for the sale and the purchase.
Yeah.
You've done the exchange. You're like, okay, it's done. Thank God. 4 months later, your CPA is like, cool, it's time to file. Get me that info. You need to file your taxes.
Right.
You have to now go through all those emails and find it. All your documents are here in one spot forever that you can just grab. Also, as a broker, as a CPA, you can get invited as an attorney, third party to this. And now you, as a broker and a CPA, have this view of any exchanges you've been invited to. You can click on them, and your client can give you access so that you can grab the documents and have transparency into where they're at in the sale.
That's very slick. That's very slick. And I love the idea that you've got the documents stored there, because that's always, you're always running around 2-3 months afterwards looking for settlement statements, all sorts of things. And sometimes it's after 4 months. But
the company we acquired in San Diego, we're getting calls all the time, like, hey, I have to fight, especially last week before the deadline, we were getting multiple calls a day, like, hey, I need this document. Where is it? And so, yeah, it's a pain, and you can just come right here and grab it.
So that's pretty slick. Now, the other thing you have that I wanted to point out to people while we have a few minutes left is, if I have questions about 1031s, and I have some off-the-wall questions, as we knew, usually you're trying to call the intermediary, and he calls you back 2 days later, or you're emailing them, and you're not getting it good. What do you have on your website that we could see? You call it Artie, right?
Artie, yeah. So this is, we're a fintech company. 60% of our employees are software engineers. And our goal really is to make the client experience so much better, and also partner with brokers and CPAs and attorneys and make it easier for them. So this is just one of the things we built. It's based off the ChatGPT model, but we train it ourselves, and we've built this model, and it's trained on all over 8,000 pages of the IRS tax code, but then it's also trained on all 1031 private letter rulings. So any case law that's come out on 1031s, it's in here. The next thing we're doing is adding state-specific data, which is going to be really cool. But we maintain this all the time. It took the CPA exam. We constantly train it, and then it outperformed humans. It passed the CPA exam, and out for me as a CPA, it was very sad. But it's a really cool tool. And the goal here is not to replace humans by any means, but it's a really good educational tool. Like, obviously, you still want to talk to your CPA, you want to talk to an attorney, you want to talk to us, but this is an amazing tool that's going to get you a quick answer, and you can ask it.
Now you go to your CPA and you do a little Teams meeting with them, or a Zoom meeting with them or her, and you say, "This is what I found." And by the way, I don't get upset with a CPA that says to me, "Oh, I didn't know that," because I understand. U.S. tax code's like, I don't even know how big it is, right? So I know they're going to miss stuff. So that's why this is useful. I can't remember the question I asked you. Do you remember? We asked it a really hard question.
I don't remember, but it was really good. It was really unique. And also you mentioned this. We do have clients who use this to save on billable hours with their, with their CPAs and attorneys, because they'll look up the questions, send them, and you'll see it provides its source documents. So it's like Perplexity, where it'll take you straight to the IRS tax code or the case law. And then that's when I learned about value billing, because a CPA found this when we were first starting, and it was like, don't know what you guys do, love this tool. And they taught us about value billing. So instead of billing by the hour, they bill for the value they provided, which I thought was funny. But yeah, if someone has a test question, even if there's someone in the audience, happy to demo.
I want to look at my LinkedIn here, because this is really one of the first times we've done this. And
yeah, I've never done this before.
Yeah, I think it's broadcasting. I mean, that's the whole premise. I think it's broadcasting right on my LinkedIn and also my Facebook. Oh yeah, we're talking now. So we do have some comments. So I'm going to open those comments up, and I'm going to read you if there's any question. Yeah.
I'm glad that we can do this for the first time together.
Okay. I know it's live. Nobody's put any questions in there. So why don't you and I try to do a few? Let's ask Artie if I'm selling an apartment house in California, can I buy mineral rights? Can I buy an oil lease in Texas?
Yep. So you can, which is the right answer. Then we can read a little bit more. And you can see here that's giving you links to some case law and some other websites. It's giving you the exact rev ruling. And so, yeah, an interest in a producing oil lease extends until the exhaustion, which is real property. So oil and mineral rights. And yeah, I mean, this is a great response.
And it gives you source documents too. That's amazing.
Yeah. Something that's super popular that comes up all the time, like clients will ask me about reverse exchanges. You come here and be like, can you explain? Well, I always go, please, because you never know.
Well, before you answer, I just want to pop this in here. So look at that second paragraph. It says consulting with a tax advisor familiar with oil and gas transactions. I'm not going to read the whole disclaimer again. Always use what you get here and then go talk to the tax professional. This makes it easier for you when you call your CPA to say, this is what I got, and here's the source documents. And the tax advisor could go, wow, that's really helpful. Oh, this is good. Yeah. Common mistakes of reverse exchange. That's great.
Yeah. And we've trained this model to, hey, make sure you talk to a professional, right? Yeah. But yeah, reverse exchange. Explain it to me and tell me some common mistakes. Let's see. So that parking arrangement confuses a lot of people on why you need one.
Right.
And so this is a really interesting thing, is that it's talking about the safe harbor of 180 days, because with reverses, there have been reverses that have gone past 180. And so it's interesting that it brings that up. It's a non-safe harbor. So it's really cool that it brings up that this is how you do a safe harbor reverse, because non-safe harbor reverses have been allowed before by the courts. So it's really cool that it gets that specific.
I wonder, the one thing is I don't see in here, which is interesting, and I guess this is something you all might consider down the road. That loan that you do has to be a non-recourse loan. The loan.
Yeah, it should be here, maybe in the parking arrangements. Maybe it talks about it. He holds title. No, it doesn't mention that it's a non-recourse.
Well, you'll get there. I mean, Artie will get smarter as we get more information, but that's, obviously, because that's what I do. If you don't have a non-recourse loan, because that money on the reverse is actually going into an LLC that you guys set up, right?
Right. You're parking it in the EAT, because the reason for that is you can't hold title to both properties at the same time. Right. So we have to set up the EAT that essentially holds title. Then what we do is essentially give a master lease to the client so they can use and do what they want. If there's rents, it goes to them. And it's really just parked there.
Now, I don't want to get into the intricacies of a reverse exchange. I've done one, not for myself, but as a broker, and it is a bear. And I can tell you that it's so important to have the qualified intermediary really on board and available, because you have to act quickly sometimes. And here we go, debt and equity mismatch. Oh yeah, show the common mistakes. This is really great.
So this is a big one, the lender issue. We see that all the time. Like, people don't realize that lenders don't like lending to LLCs. So the fact that it's calling, like, this is a big one. And so Artie called that out, like, hey, they might not want to lend to an EAT. And so you have to get lenders who are okay with that and understand reverse exchanges.
Yeah, and I will actually tell anybody who's watching, whether they watch this or the recording, I can arrange that for you. I've done it. You're not going to get 6%. You're not going to get 6% loan today. You're going to get closer to a 9 or 10. But as a matter of fact, one of the lenders may be watching. So, because he said he might come. But that's the type of person they can lend. They're perfectly comfortable lending into. You're calling it an EAT. What's it called? An EAT?
An EAT, yeah. We exchange accommodation title holder is what it stands for. So that's a mouthful. So EAT is.
Isn't that usually an LLC that's set up?
Yeah, it's an LLC.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
I see Nick asked a question. Is there a CRM or client management feature for brokers? Yeah. So I think, Nick, the software piece here is really where you would be able to track it. So if your client invites you to their exchange on the app, which we call this our app, you'll have this exact view. So you can get added from your client and you can see any client that you have with deferred. If they invite you, you'll be able to see this, and then you can click into each one and see where they're at in the where are they in their timeline, and you'll have full transparency into the exchange.
That's a good question, Nick. By the way,
Yeah.
Nick is not a broker yet. Nick is a University of Tampa. He is the president of the University of Tampa Real Estate Club. And
cool.
He's a good guy. He's a real good guy, and he's just down the road from us here. And we love the University of Tampa Real Estate Club here at the Matthews Tampa office. And I'm grateful for Nick for the help he gave us this weekend with a friend of mine from town who was interested in the school. But Nick is a short time. He's asking the right questions, isn't he?
Yeah, Nick, if you, by the way, I'll throw it out there. If your club or the University of Tampa ever needs anything, feel free to reach out. Happy to talk about this stuff or support any way I can.
Daniel loves coming up here too. Loves coming to Tampa.
I love those 40-minute flights. They're great.
Why don't we close out with one more question yet? Do we have a hard question we can throw in there, you think?
Let's see. Trying to think what this one's
let's do this, because I think this used to be something. I'm sure it'll come up. I'm sure, if I'm selling real estate in an exchange, are there any other investments I can exchange into?
And I'll get a little bit specific, and just a lot of people ask about REITs. So I'll ask what else can I, and I'll throw in something specific too. So yeah, the leasehold interest is one I was going to ask, because this is something that I'm working on a cell phone tower deal right now. And, those are always interesting, and leases in general, because people don't realize you can 1031 a lease if it's over 30 years, and that includes the renewal. So if it has a lease period including renewal extensions over 30 years, it qualifies as like kind. And so I have people that will do ground leases, and that counts. They technically don't own it. So this is all the different types that you can go into. It's got the oil and gas, leasehold, land, residential, and commercial properties. So this is a good response here. And then you cannot exchange into a REIT, right? REITs are considered securities. They're not real property, and they don't qualify.
Yep. And then it also talks about a Delaware statutory trust.
And I didn't expect it to do that. So this thing is getting really smart, that it's even talking about DST. Like, hey, you asked about a REIT. That doesn't fit, but this other alternative investment does, and it's kind of like one.
Did you, before we close out, did you ever get connected with, I think his name's Tommy down there in South Florida, who works for that DST firm?
No, I actually called him funnily Monday, and I just connected with him on LinkedIn. So Tommy, if you hear this, I'm going to give you another call.
All right. So let's talk about ways to contact you. First thing you can do is you call me. I will put you in touch with Daniel right away. You can also just go to deferred.com, right?
Yeah, you can go to deferred.com. You can contact me through Brian. He has my personal cell phone number. Yep. If you want to use us and get started, you can click get started and go online. The other way is to schedule an intro call. So start an exchange, schedule an intro call. Our shared email is support@deferred.com. And you can always call us 866-442-1031. If you scroll to the bottom, you'll see our phone number. You can also text that number. You'll see our support email. You'll see a link to Artie. You'll also see a link to a bunch of our other stuff that you guys can play around with.
But if you are selling a property and you're watching this and you can't, for some reason, figure out the Deferred website, or you can't figure out Daniel Osman, you can call Brian Brady. You can send me a DM. I will get you in touch with Daniel. And I'll obviously probably put a pitch in to get some of your business too. But this is a great tool. We have not completed an exchange. Again, I'm not going to read the whole disclaimer that I read in the beginning. The one thing I'll say is this isn't approved by Matthews Real Estate. We're not making a representation or warranty about the completeness or accuracy, the reliability. But you should do your own homework and go to deferred.com and have a conversation with Daniel.
Yeah, we
With
love
that-
talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
Anyone who wants to talk about it, I love it. I also see, Brian, real quick, Nick asked one more question.
Okay.
In what scenarios could a 1031 exchange fail, even if timelines and property types are correct? So it could fail if the QI doesn't fail, in the sense if you got audited and it was found, no one would know it would fail in this regard. But if the QI didn't check the settlement statement was done correctly, right? There's certain things that need to be marked on the settlement statement. If the proper documents weren't signed, so like on the outside, you might think everything was done. You hit the timelines, you did the right properties, but if you didn't set it up correctly, that's one way. If you got audited, the other way is you could do partial exchanges. So maybe you didn't hit your full reinvestment amount, or the debt wasn't replaced properly. You still do it, but you didn't get 100% deferral. And then the other, I had one other thought, but I thought of it. Nick, I'll get back to you, but there's one other one. It'll come to me later and I'll email it to you. But I have one other way that it can fail. But yeah, Brian, thank you so much for having me.
Really
Always
good to
great
have you,
talking to
Daniel. Thank you. You're the first guest on this little bi-weekly thing I'm going to do. I'm going to end the stream. I know it'll be saved in a video, and I'll make sure that you have a link of it so you can share it with people. And thanks everybody for watching.
Awesome. I'm going to wait for my plaque that says congratulations on the first.
Oh, it's coming. I'm going to get you a shirt. You wear that
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
Instead of your Nokia
Make sure
exchange, it'll be I was number one, right?
Yeah, and then contact Brian Brady. Thanks,
All right,
Brian.
guys.
Thanks,
Take
everyone.
care. Bye-bye.